Hello, this is the voice of Stewart Pearce, and welcome to Deep Dialogues, a series of vital conversations that I have with global soul stewards from all over the world who provide us with an understanding of how we can create a new hierarchy of values that is absolutely significant at this unique time of becoming. I hope you enjoy, and thanks for listening. Hello, 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 hello to all of you wonderful people out there, all you beacons of light. Thank you so much for tuning in. And to the wonderful Helena, who's looking so splendid today. She is in basking heat in Florida, whereas in Europe we're all feeling rather chilly. You know, autumn, the fall has arrived. But welcome, welcome, welcome as always. This is going to be an amazing deep dialogue. We have a very, very wonderful lady sitting in front of us. Sarah, hello, 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 hello. They're all beginning to check in, you see. So, and Dorina, hello, good evening to you, wherever you may be. So can you see the chat box, Helena? Can you see the chat box? It's on the right of the screen.
I can see it, yes.
Okay, good. So you'll see wonderful people popping up. So let me officially introduce the wonderful Helena. This is Helena Reilly. Hello, Janie, Agnieszka. Wonderful to see you. So Helena is the co-founder of www.quantumsoundtherapy.com and has pioneered the use of sound frequencies and immersive quantum energy vortex technology to effect lasting transformation within the human body, radically decreasing the impactful nature of stress and disease. Her mission is to harmonize humanity through the voice code software that she has developed with her partner, Robert Loy, which identifies the nuances of the subconscious, delivering a harmonizing soundtrack that releases the patterns of unseen stress, which sabotage the well-being of the individual. Similarly, her quantum miracle iQube process synergistically combines the science of scalar energy with sound therapy to effect transformation within the unconscious. Helena is an expert in applying voice code sound therapy and quantum technology as leading edge methods for healing profound human decay. Ooh. Helena, I'm so pleased that you're here because it's I've had my darling Chloe Goodchild, who's a great sister, sound healer on. But of course, we're working both very intuitively, and here you are using the radical nature of quantum sound therapy to bring about vast change. So welcome, 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 welcome.
Thank you, thank you, thank you for having me, Stuart. I'm very, very happy to be here.
Oh, bless you, bless you. And to all of you people that are coming along, Elarina, Jenny, Jane, Janie, all of you, lots of Jennies. Welcome, welcome, welcome. As you see, the beautiful Helena is with us. So in a nutshell, could you perhaps share with us quantum sound therapy?
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having us today. Quantum sound therapy was birthed because I was a highly intuitive child and started, giving psychic readings as a child, but then became the therapist. But then I saw nothing exactly delivered the goods to shift these repetitive patterns of self-sabotage and self-hatred, self-denial. And so I went on a lifelong pursuit, both, climbing the academic ladder and studying with everyone I could find. And finally, finding the Masters of the Far East in India, where I've spent about a third of my life. And this came about as a result of my actually seeing in the ashrams of India that even the chanting, meditation, living in the ashram, being a vegetarian, seva, service, they also were not hitting these patterns that I could see, sense, and feel. So after being the therapist in 3 of the leading gurus' ashrams and learning everything I could about karmic patterns, I really asked the universe. I was told by my guru, I had owned another company. I was told by my guru, Gurumai Chivalasananda, that I was to go back. My mission was in healing. And I thought, it doesn't seem like there's too much of that going on. So I asked for something that worked to deal with the samskaras or the patterns. And that's when I was in Honolulu at the time, with my family. I eventually met up with this technology, and I could see the power of the sound, the precise sound frequencies to decode, recode, and reset the subconscious in seconds. And I know you know this as well. Because we're energy moving, particularly in this accelerated vortex of change, honestly, it's my humble opinion and yours and Bruce Lipton's that it's really what will work during this time. And our work is about depicting, we actually analyze 5 octaves of the human voice and over 1 billion bits of information. But behind each of those notes, there are energetic patterns that in most cases people are not consciously aware of. So as we work with the frequencies to decode, this evolution or this expansion begins to occur. And I want to say one more thing, which is that during this pivotal moment in time, we are actually working on our ancestral lineage. And so we're swimming in this great sea of the subconscious together. So we're having to sort this out, the light, whatever you want to call people doing this work, light leaders or mentors. But there's no longer a time to escape. So we need to reset.
Yeah.
And the frequency and the voice, in my humble opinion, is the hack to go into the subconscious and sort of unwind those patterns, those frequencies that have been dominating many lifetimes and your ancestral lineage. And also 99% of what you're working on, it's likely isn't even just yours.
Yeah.
Just to get you off the hook. So it's not even, it's the accumulation of thousands of years.
Yeah. Yeah. That's such a wonderful synthesis. My gosh, it's iridescent. It's so clear. So thank you for the clarity and the wisdom that pours through. So we know that we're clearing ancestral lineage on a cellular level through cellular memory as a result of the remarkable evolution of our planet and indeed our universe and our galaxy and our cosmos. We know that planet Earth has just moved through this extraordinary portal of finalizing the cosmic portal of 13,000 years and beginning anew. We're no longer dawning Aquarius, we're actually in Aquarius. Do you feel that this is a pivoting mechanism that is encouraging this level of awakening within cellular nature to uncover the shadow within unconscious?
I love that question. Absolutely. So it's been my experience, and I actually am an intuitive. So it has been my actual experience that when we went through that Lion's Gate, that we were kind of squeezed into this new era, this quantum, and I call it quantum pivot. And in that, we actually are being faced with the shadow, but there's an accelerated opportunity to release it. So I heard this one thing yesterday that 50% of New York City, well, you work there and I work there as well, they're on antidepressants. So right at this pivotal moment, it's a choice point. Do we actually allow ourselves to work through the shadow and to be okay with it? And that means, like, this is a great example. This morning I woke up thinking of my childhood, so many things that I'd never thought about for years. Like, I thought, what made me do that? And things that I had completely either suppressed or repressed. So when we go through these pivotal moments, we have this, we can go back to the repression, or we can just honor it and let it go. And there's one thing that I have discovered in this squeezing. And if you squeeze through this and allow yourself to go through that portal, you'll find you're quite a different person, actually. And the question, the only thing that I would caution everyone to do is to be very kind and gentle, remembering these patterns. And this is where the concept of quantum reality comes in. Not only is it what will liberate us, because it's in that strata that we are interconnected. So you and I are one. We're not separate beings. When you shift, I will shift. When Johnny Jones, we will all do this together. So in the quantum reality, you have to realize that the heavy lifting is already being done for us, but you can't run and hide. And also there's one caveat that I have discovered. You do not have the permission to judge yourself or anyone else. It's just a strange reality that in the quantum field, in order to gain access to this realm of potential, whatever's happening now is synchronous, and it is exactly what is supposed to be happening. Whether your key employee just quit or it doesn't really matter. It is that this is the time where we just sort it through and have the faith and trust. And no judgment of yourself, your family. That's a big mistake I realized, is that back in the day when I was studying psychoanalysis and all of those things, it was okay you can't really judge right now. You have to look into the field. So yes, this is this time of a pivot where you literally can land in your quantum potential as quite a different reality. And one needs to remain very open to what's actually being shown to you in that moment, whether it is, it could be the smallest thing, whether it's some expert that tells you, that you need to consider this, be listening at every moment, because the veils are thin, the shift has occurred, the opportunities are on the other side of that veil.
So the level of judiciousness, the level of discernment, as opposed to judgment that you're working is really beautiful. If it doesn't involve us, it doesn't evolve us.
Yes.
And so we need to recognize that we are on a course of individuating within the all that is and shall be forevermore, which is a very radical leading edge principle. It's very different from where, for example, Carl Jung was able to identify the individuation process that was essentially arising out of the release of the social mask, the awareness of the unconscious. But now we're actually seeing that our consciousness is, as it were, spilling over with light. And as a result, why would we ever hold shadow? All it requires is a consistent tuning and lasering of the wonderful intention. I will not judge, I will discern, and thereby I will be free from any ancestral pattern. So it literally goes deep, deep, deep into our cellular memory, deep into the shadow, the unconscious, the subconscious. I feel we're talking about the same terrain, aren't we, on all three levels?
Yes, absolutely. The subconscious is, as they say, your cells are listening to your thoughts. The subconscious and the cellular terrain has been imprinted with such a level of falseness, let's call it the matrix, that when we unhook and we realize, and this is going on globally, we realize actually who we are, what our true potential is.
Yes.
There's a complex range of emotions, and this can happen so quickly. It can happen in your sleep. So you're awakening the subconscious, but to free it.
Yes.
And not to
so
hold
beautiful. I mean, I just want to pause there. Can you please, everybody, hello, Twiff, Marjorie, Warrior, Tobias, Stacy, Lisa, One Love. Oh, lovely. I love One Love.
One love.
Just simmer in what Helena is sharing with us, because she's saying something absolutely radical. Helena, if I could share with you, I was awake all last night
Oh.
at a very exciting workshop online called the Heart Spa, which was glorious.
Mm.
Loads and loads and loads of lovely, lovely, lovely people coming and chanting and meditating and listening to spirit teachings, and everything was all go sacred. We had a wonderful
Mm.
time. I had lots of lovely emails from people saying, "Oh my goodness, I feel ecstatic." But I was awake all night as a result of the wonderful complexity of those processes. But also, I was aware of the fact that I was channeling. I was aware of the fact that I was listening into the deep field of outer space and receiving pulsations of light. And what I was told is that we are receiving at the moment a new level of light species, a level of light species that thus far has not fully entered into the stratosphere or indeed the atmosphere of planet Earth, but now it is. And the awareness, of course, is that this intergalactic intelligence is very aware of what's taking place within we humans, in the way that you were just describing it, that we're beginning to recognize that if we enter into the higher self, ascended consciousness, where we are completely at one with the multidimensionalness of the universe, the all that is and shall be forevermore, then there's no need for the shadow. There is no need for the unconscious. Unconscious becomes fully conscious. Do you feel what quantum sound is also leading us towards?
Well, quantum sound was developed by a group of meditators, myself and Robert, to begin with the explicit assignment to awaken humanity and to stop the downward spiral, which is in all of our cells. And so it's been developed very consciously over quite a long period of time to have frequencies that actually pierce through those blockages and help to awaken the third eye, to connect you to the crown, because we're only recalling right now. We're not, this is our birthright, our divine birth. And all of the beloveds listening, what's key, quantum sound was developed to actually expand. We didn't understand this when we started developing it and working on it, that the 5G and things would be interfering with some of the transmissions of light. But now we do understand that. But it was developed because humanity for about 6,000 years has been in a downward spiral when we became very intellectual and the third eye closed. It was roughly around the time of Socrates and Plato. And we sort of overrode the intuition at that time. And it is just a part of the global awakening by spreading coherent field, because once you start to work on quantum levels, we all connect at a very different level. So each instrument, each physical technology actually builds a different field. And since it's multidimensional, these fields are very interconnected, which means that when I start to shift, everyone around me is shifting. When you start to shift, it's going to impact me. So this illusion of separateness is what is dissolving. And that's why you can't judge, because if we're all one, who are we judging? We're judging ourselves. And there's one other really important part about quantum sound, which is, as this psychologist, and I was born in Newton, Massachusetts, so I studied with all these Harvard dudes, and so the whole thing about then was to examine the story. And now you've got to let go of the story. The moment you see that story come up, whether it's a cat crosses your path, and you've got to let go, you've got to free yourself. And that's what quantum sound is about. It's about clearing the field of energy so that you can see, that my vibration is pretty clear, that this is clear. and that the field is clear around you, so that even if it's just the coherent vortex of your home, you have a centering and a grounding effect in your home, because it's like cutting down all the noise, all of, the matrix noise, the beliefs, people projecting energies on you. We know, as people that have worked as therapists, that people are always projecting out, and that attaches. So the idea is that you and your children and your grandchildren and 7 generations pre and post get cleared now. And we go from duality to unity, to oneness. And it's really simple, but yes, the light beings, I've experienced this myself, are extremely available. And they're really asking us to access this knowledge and wisdom. All of the solutions, quantum sound is one, it does the heavy lifting, so we get out of this depression, despair, anxiety cycle into higher genius capacity. And I want to say, it's why we've attracted some of the leaders, like Tony Robbins has 10 of our instruments. He has a couple of houses, so I don't know exactly where they move them around to. But what's key is that we do everything in our power to move ourselves and our own lineage, our own, which is, this is our lineage, this embodiment right now. And we move this into greater awareness, aliveness, creativity, genius, and really begin to let go of what's been holding you back. Don't believe it. When it comes up, don't believe that. Try something else. And these light beings, it's amazing what we could create here, actually. And so all of the beings that are using sound now are the ones that have been guided to do some of the clearing of humanity, whether it's intuitive readings or voice analysis, or we are the ones that we're kind of like the garbage collectors. we're the ones that saw it and realized it had to be shifted. So, and it's kind of a simple job when you understand it.
Yes, and you have a beautifully clear, agile mental body, so you're able to deduce the quantum field into this area of coherence, this area of reference. May I ask you this a simple question? How do we cease the story?
And see, that's where I feel the voice comes in, is that the voice depicts the story without our speaking it, in frequency. So the story, and it's the past, present, future, and it's infinite past, infinite future. So by analyzing the voice and the nuances of the harmonics over octaves, that's your story. You're actually a walking musical scale that has been absorbing and is expressing your story on a frequency level. And so what we're doing is we're then using sound to shift that story and release some of these, let's call them impacted or overly stressed notes. So we both know this, that there are no two human voices on earth with exactly the same blend of frequencies. And that should tell us all that your voice is your story. And the way to actually, the shortcut or the hack into the subconscious is to use your voice as the pathway to your transformation. You don't have to know that 15 lifetimes ago you got killed in Egypt and you're now married to the guy that killed you. You don't need to know that, but you can. It may come in a dream. I'm just giving a radical example, which sometimes is a reading of somebody on the line. But you don't need to know that. And if you do need to know it, it will come naturally or through a past life regression, because you have a pain in your ankle. That's what happens often. There's a pain in the body. But the thing is that because we're frequency beings and we're actually bodies of water, we've actually resonated frequencies into the cells in the water, in our body, and that's what's creating our reality, is this frequency. When you then analyze it and clear some of these strange cobwebs or imbalances, your life begins to shift. Something that would trigger you, it's gone. And as frequency beings, it's what's poorly understood. It's what the light masters totally understand. We're frequency beings. We're not solid beings. This is just one manifestation that we're in at the moment, and there might be another 1,000. So we have to expand who we think we are, but use the voice to enter that reality, that you can alter your song, your musical, as a musical being, you can alter that story through frequency much more quickly than through understanding through here. This is what we did at University of Chicago. This is what we did at Harvard. This is what we did everywhere. That we looked at it from our mind. Now let yourself resonate it out so it has a less effect. And that's our mission. Is, in my own life, I saw, the people around me were so burdened, and yet I could understand they really didn't have to be. They were so affluent, but they acted. So I could see this needed to shift. So at this time, I would say use sound and frequency and quantum understandings to make these quantum leaps so you don't get left behind. Maybe we should talk about that. Yeah, so there's a new world here. And we don't want anyone left behind, really. You don't want to get stuck in the mud or the quicksand, because it's also very chaotic.
So just because we're rising out of the impacted nature of cerebral consciousness, where we've been educated, socialized, conditioned continuously into thinking, doing, we are impacted. And of course, what we're doing is we're liberating the nature of that and suggesting that there's another reality, or indeed multi-reality, that is awaiting us, which is why we're speaking of quantum sound therapy. So reaching into the quantum field to recognize that we are aspects of quanta. The story is the big thing, isn't it? Because we know the cerebral consciousness is based on quantification, not qualitative energies, or qualificational energies. The quality of something is based on the quantity of something. And so, of course, the discourse that we hear either within or on the outside of us, which we've been educated by, is the competitive discourse of the ego. And therefore, the cerebralization of our world becomes impacted, which is why, for example, I'm drawing a lot of leading people from the world of science to me at the moment, because they're all recognizing that they're not communicating very well, because they're condensed into Zoom communication as a result of COVID, and people aren't attending their lectures or whatever. So they're coming for specialized therapy. And the first thing that I hear is this discursive, discoursive, judgmental, rational, conscious arguing. And that's why I feel it's so beautiful, because the argument starts with judgment, doesn't it? The argument starts with, I'm not good enough, in fact, which is a huge
key. That has, that belief has been perpetuated to keep people enslaved, really. The belief I'm not good enough, and also victim consciousness. Those are the two things that are not allowed. It will lower your frequency if you buy into that. And I do want to comment on the science. It could be that since the science is changing, like I know that that's the reason I never became a scientist in this life, is that I knew a different science. And since the science is changing, people may not be resonating with what they're saying. And the other thing I want to say is that this time is about fluidity and flexibility, not rigidity. So if you wake up tomorrow morning and you go, that made sense, or that didn't make sense, you have to follow that. That is your guidance team.
Mm.
And you need to actually amplify your intuition, which is what our work is about, clearing this, this minefield that we've been living in. And the problem is that humans become like broken records. They just keep repeating and repeating and repeating. Everyone wants to stay in their comfort zone. But here is the thing, is that this time requires speed. Have you noticed it? Things move fast. You've got to decide. Whatever you decide, you've got to be cool with. But also fluidity, flexibility. And the nature of our sciences have been determined by a lot of structure and a lot of rigidity. Even the degrees and the way people are trained, and also the Newtonian mentality, which is what we're moving out of. That may be the deeper reason people aren't listening, is that it doesn't feel good anymore, and it doesn't resonate. Well,
we're realizing that it's actually an illusion, that what we've been taught, because fundamentally we've been in search of safety and security, and of what central government, particularly during the latter part of medievalism, did, and when commercialization began to produce greater mobility, greater fluidity, that automatically we were suggested that no, you'll feel safe and secure if you come over here because this is permanent.
Yes.
And now we're beginning to realize, wait a minute, what is this thing to do with, there's no such thing as permanency. All we have is change. The quantum field is suggesting that we are infinitely unfolding creative possibilities full of love and joy. So we're unfolding rather than sticking, resisting, competing. There was something else that I just wanted to grab hold of as well for a second, not to contract or to restrain, but to open up. It's the idea of our story, because we humans love stories. Very fewer people are reading stories. More people are watching stories in the form of film, or indeed listening to audio, because we spend so much time in the mobility of our cars, particularly in large continents like the United States or Canada. So if we can realize that it's not to do with the story, we become so affixed within the story, but it's the theme that's important. And it seems to me that that's where the quantum principle actually is, that we're really trying to find out what are the karmic themes. It's just that we get bogged down in the story rather than actually allowing ourselves to be elevated into, wait a minute, there's a theme here which is persistent guilt, or there's a theme here of continuous abuse. It's not about the story, it's about the element of abuse. So what is the alchemical property that is the opposite of abuse? And as soon as we start living that possibility, light shines into the darkness that's held in the switching off mechanism. I talk a lot about switching on and switching off. We switch on to the light, we switch off to the dark. We switch on to the light, we switch on to the dark. And how many people can't focus as they communicate today. So there's this constant boom, 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 not realizing that every time we engage in rapid eye movement, that we're switching on and switching on and switching on and switching off. It's something that we actors learned, you see, because the whole principle of acting is the transmission of the intention, the transmission of the action. And so as we see on film, we're trained or encouraged or practice keeping our eyes not over focused like this, but being aware of how focus is about how we physically attend to the intention. Because one of the most important vibrations within the field of acting is not what we are doing, but how we actually excite response in fellow actor. And if we allow them to be glistening in their whatever they're playing, and it can obviously be darkness, but in response to whatever's happening, then we automatically follow suit. Interesting paradigm, isn't it? Because it allows us to understand more about our basic relationship structures.
So I want to comment on this because, first of all, the quantum field is empty. It's composed of the tiniest particles, so that I could be in 3,000, so that one particle can be in 3,000 places at once. Now, human consciousness, we're accessing the quantum field according to the latest neuroscience, something like thousands or even more times a second, which might be why people also are blinking, because as they're accessing, they may be receiving information, especially if they're tapped in to something else. So here's the thing. This communication that's happening now is, even you and I, this is as real as if you and I were in the same room. That's quantum right there. Just digest that. This is a quantum conversation, and we are in the same space right now. And you're impacting not only me and this that I'm walking around in, the one they call Helena, right? But you're impacting 7 generations pre and post. As a matter of fact, I realized today's my parents' wedding's anniversary. They're not here anymore, but I suddenly realized that's interesting. So you're impacting by this conversation because every cell is listening. And with an actor, that's what's happening. You're playing with that energy and transmitting it consciously. But that's happening this is just as real in the quantum field as any physical modality. And in some ways, sometimes this is distraction. So I do want to say that I think, again, what is shifting, what I notice my conversations are about more and more, is that people are still in some of the old paradigm, believing that this standing desk that goes up and down is solid. And in the quantum world, or that you are in a separate space. In the quantum world, that is not reality. And also, there's one other aspect I do want to point out, because this helps people to change, to transform. The other belief in the Newtonian physics, I'm just going to take it down the logical level, is that if this is solid, if this is really Helena, which we know it isn't. Helena's probably in 3,000 places at once. She's chosen this focal point for a certain reason. If all of that is true, and none of this is actually physically occurring, then you can shift in a second. And in the old paradigm that didn't even believe in neuroplasticity, it took years of analysis. People used to go to their analyst. I mean, I think it's hysterical now, because I was trained as an analyst at 15 to do work with the children that nobody else could work with. That as a human right now, you can shift in a second. That's the new paradigm. And when you shift, so there's a good reason to change your understanding that, you've been immersed in this Maya that is Newtonian physics. Nothing wrong with it, just a little less enlightened, or a lot. But this allows you to realize you actually can shift the cells of your body and your consciousness instantly. And that's what opens. That's why the technology. So there's one thing, the quantum sound technology, it took us a while to realize this. It was about 2007. We were doing just voice analysis through the coils, and the coils are a version of a Tesla coil. They're sort of counter rotational fields, meet in the middle, 0-point field, cancellation effect occurs. Coherent energy for you to bathe in. We realized in 2007 that people had to sleep. It had to be on 24/7. We used to just do like imprints, like voice sessions. And then we started to develop these technologies 24/7, because we realized people always regress to the old patterns, and that the brain needed to be entrained constantly, or we would slip back. And again, that's part of realizing even your brain is a field of information that's always seeking information. You don't have to be physically anywhere to be learning, to be.
But at the same time, what's really remarkable, I just want to celebrate the conviction of these extraordinary physical bodies that we have.
Mm.
We know that they are beautiful temples for our souls. And my firm belief is that we begin to open into the neuroplasticity, into the multiplicitousness of the quantum field when we truly reside in our bodies and see them as glorious vessels. That, you know, and for me, on a sacred level, that's what I believe. We interpret through one particular lens or filter, which is in the beginning was the word, or in the beginning was sound, and the sound was made flesh and dwelt among us, full of grace and truth. That it is an access point into the logos. It is an aspect point into the nature of multidimensional consciousness. But so we become truly embodied. That's, I believe, what it's all about. Isn't it? Rather than
Yes.
leaving our bodies, we come back into our bodies. But of course, well, our bodies are accommodating the richness of what quanta is all about, because within the human vessel, we create the quanta. There's an interesting question here, which I'd love to ask from somebody that I know very well, Jonam Tulio Ross, who is a very remarkable individual in the world who actually helps people who have lived or indeed been infused in indoctrination programs,
Oh.
particularly within religious sects.
Mm.
And he's a guardian force for taking people through release mechanism of, you know, years and years and years, all the way through their childhood, whatever, of being endorsed within one particular contracting belief system, and then allowing them to expand in relation to their own quanta. And he's saying, do they believe? Do they believe? Do you believe? Do they believe? Do they believe something different? Do people believe something different? Or do they inhabit the same narrative and simply play the game better than the masses? It's a convoluted question because Jonah is wonderfully
Now, who's they? Who is they who believes something different?
So humans.
Oh, okay. Or do they inhabit the same narrative and simply
play the
play
game.
the game better than the masses?
Mm. Any response? It's quite a complex question, but I thought interesting. They meaning the elite. He's just thank
That's
you.
what I thought. Yes, yes.
Love to you. Yes, this they. What this they? No, that's more complex.
We just need to know who they is, and then I can
The
answer.
elite. The elite.
Oh,
the captains of industry.
okay. So I can definitely answer that.
What I call the thought police.
You see, that was in their DNA also.
Mm.
So and this is where I remember Muktananda would call it, we're all just playing different roles in God's club, and they're all very divine roles. And, you know, in the Indian culture,
Please say that again. Please say that again.
we're all just playing different roles in God's club. So it's like we all belong to a country club, but we have very different roles here. And so that is in their DNA, and that entire belief system is in their DNA, that they own things, that they run things, that they are the captains of industry, that they are Elon Musk, that they have to go to Mars first. So that is very deeply embedded in what one would call the DNA. And there's a high level of intelligence. And so it's important to understand that that is also part of the DNA that's shifting, where you can now believe that you can be a captain of your own industry, whatever that industry is. It could be your home. It doesn't have to be Apple computers or Tesla cars, but it can be this. It can be your body. And so deep in their cellular memory, 7 generations pre and post, they have that. I have 6 generations of entrepreneurs in my DNA. So of course, you know, we create things. My grandfather invented the plastic eyeglass frame. So we create things that nobody understands. And so this is part of the DNA. But what we're saying here is that it is so plastic. And this is where I learned an outstanding fact last week. In the world, in 125 countries, women are allowed to own real estate, any kind of tax, any kind of stocks or bonds, etc., any kind of asset. And guess what? In 75 countries, women are still not allowed to own real estate and other investments. So you can see this would be imprinted so deeply in the psyche of women, which is why there's so much talk about the rebirth of the divine feminine. But you can see that we're all swimming in that field. So even if we think we're really that advanced, the fact that there are 75 countries tells me that Earth is still very primitive, you know? And so, but this is imprinted on a daily basis in the water in your body. And the water in your body has tremendous memory, but it's very fluid, so it can shift. So what we're suggesting here is that your DNA is re-imprintable. We're also suggesting that sound frequencies are a shortcut. And the third thing that I'm suggesting is that quantum or scalar or Tesla technology is a way to shortcut that repatterning. So they're not anything special. They were just programmed slightly different and have different purpose here. And part of what you're going to see is that there are going to be mass groups of people that both leave these structured organizations. I've been seeing it in our work. I'm hearing every day, like I was an ex. I just did another summit and she was an ex, I forget, just, you know, Jehovah's Witness and, you know, I have no judgments against any of them. I guess they appeal to different people at different times. But there does seem to be like a lot of people really questioning that illusion or that belief system, and you're going to see more and more of that because it no longer resonates. And there's huge control around that. And many have said that part of what's going to shift on Earth is that the power structure, that the people, you know, that there have been so few families controlling the wealth of Earth. That's what has to shift for this, you know, global awakening. So I had, you know, Harikhan Babaji said that in 1982.
Yeah.
That one of the biggest problems on Earth is that there's basically like a few families controlling profound wealth. So, yeah, so it is all part of the DNA, which is reprogrammable, decode, recode, reset. Keep getting that. That's why it's very important that you listen and model. So when you see something that you want to be like, say, I don't like get jealous or angry that you're not that way. Say, you know, I want that. That's, I see myself evolving into that.
So we actually see relativity rather than comparison. That's the interesting thing, because we're all, if we're all little dots, we're joining the dots in this wonderful collective communion, and the key is love. By the way, you know, as you hovered over Jehovah's Witness, you know that Jonam, who asked that extraordinary question about the elite, he is actually an ex-Jehovah's Witness.
Oh.
So it's within the field, do you see? And you as an intuitive pick it up. And so what he's literally doing is being a witness to the nature of the sanctuary that can be held in some of the crystalline teachings, but also helping people to reprogram on all levels of experience, physically, emotionally, mentally, and spiritually, who have been held in contractive behaviors that have been endorsed by the judgment and the ridicule and the defamation and the disapprobation and the denigration of how so many of the brainwashing techniques that are used come about. So that's what he's actually
yes, and
so it's in the field, you see, because we're, you know, because it's a vibration of religious fundamentalism. Just as we were referring to political fundamentalism just now, we're beginning to realize that wherever there is fundamentalism, that the 75 countries where women are not allowed to use a credit card or to have a a mortgage on their homes, or indeed to even sign a lease on renting property. The
Wow.
men have to do it. I
Mm.
wonder how many of them are held under the jurisdiction of Islam.
Oh, and I didn't go deeper than that. So so I should actually find that out and share that,
It would be interesting,
because that's
because we know that there are 19 countries throughout the world where a woman is now the supreme commander. A woman is either the prime minister or the president. In the way that, for example, when we look at New Zealand and we see Jacinda Ardern being the beautiful being that she is, or we're seeing what Kamala is beginning to do as vice president in the United States, remarkable things are happening. Talking of sound, I know many of the communion that are listening in or watching in this evening will know that I often say there's a Japanese proverb that says, when the women's voices are aroused, the mountains move. So you see, the mountains are moving.
The mountains are moving. That was what apparently the Dalai Lama said something similar. He said that the change will come about by women in the West. He said
And
quite
the next chapter of history will be written by the women and the girls, is what his statement.
Beautiful. And yes, so I wanted to say that in terms of one of the things, and so if people feel uncomfortable, one of the things that is being agitated and brought up to the surface. So we both understand this, that when you start to deal with the subconscious, the memories start to surface. That's one of the beauties of sound. It brings it up, but then you can let it go, because vibrationally, it kind of resonates it out of your field.
Oh, could you just hover on that and just explain what that means? Because
Yes.
that's huge, but at the same time,
Right.
you deal with it in such a deft way.
So what happens is
So
when
how does
when
that
you're carrying a frequency, so remember, we are harmonic beings, and when you're carrying a frequency and you apply another frequency, it's actually the harmonics are going to shift your resonant frequency over time. And when so this is a different language, the vibrational language, when your resonant frequency shifts, you're actually virtually a different person. And or your experience, even in the same reality, your experience of that reality could be quite different. And therefore you would attract different experiences based on that. One of the things that's really happening is that this is being boiled up or brought to the surface, these falsehoods of abuse and control, whether it's religion, political stuff. It doesn't really matter. It's the false, the things that do not resonate as truth or higher frequency are being exposed. And that is part of what this time is about. So if that makes you uncomfortable, that's a good thing. If, for example, you were in some group or cult and you were forced to acquiesce, that part of you that is now feeling uncomfortable and can no longer do that could bring about depression, anxiety, even suicide, it's important to honor that discomfort is that you're realizing it's not the truth. And you're no longer in resonance. And then if you apply sound, what will happen is we are essentially musical beings. We are musical scales. And as you listen to frequency, even listening to our conversation is shifting the belief system for us and for in that quantum field and a few other dimensions. So I'm addressing that. I'm not sure for who or why, but the issue of the discomfort is just that this pattern of abuse and disempowerment is being resonated out of the field where people are questioning that. Like, do I really have to do that? Who made that up? So but we're all going through the same thing, because it can go to deeper and deeper levels.
So in terms of sound, in a very simplistic way, what we're recognizing is that the themes of oppression, the themes of fundamentalism, the theme of ugliness, cruelty, hatred, violence, that these states are disharmonic states. and that once we introduce another resonance, a harmonic resonance, automatically the individual moves into coherence, moves into
Mm.
consonance from the dissonance. I think they feel that that's what's so crucial. And you know,
Mm.
the absolute bounty of 432 hertz, you know, that as soon as we move beyond where all of the energy is trapped. I saw this happening, you know, I
Mm.
managed a beautiful sacred geometric theatre for 13 years, which was the
Oh.
reconstruction of Shakespeare's Globe. I wasn't the only person, but I was the master of voice. That's where I get my title from. And I found it extraordinary that within the vibration of this oak chamber, albeit open air, built on sacred geometric principles, that the great works of Shakespeare could be imparted because they're full of this quantum field. They're
Mm.
full of
True.
magical
He was
possibilities.
a great
But
genius.
when they were imparted, through certain tunes, certain melodies, and I mean with the spoken voice, I don't mean with the sung voice, that you could literally see 1,600 people ripple with the coherence or ripple with the dissonance. And that our job through the journey of the 2 hours traffic of the stage was to bring people back into coherence. And so it, you know,
Mm.
another way of illustrating my own particular experience in the
Yes.
wonder and the bounty of what you've been describing to us. We are unfortunately nearing completion for our
Mm.
conversation. In terms of the time frame, we know that, of course, our conversation is going to go on and on and on and on and on and on, resonating
No
through the.
ripples.
But I just wanted to open up to these wonderful, wonderful people, all you blessed ones. Is there anybody who would like to ask a question within the next 5 minutes? Because we will need to eventually, as it were, close the door on this particular light portal, knowing full well that we're always going to be seeing through whatever the closure is represented as being. Any questions, any questions, any questions? Well, I would love you to, dear Helena, I'd love you to just simply ground us in relation to the therapeutic machines, so that
Okay.
you know
Yes.
go to quantum sound therapy and discover what you were talking about. That Tony Robbins has several.
Yes, has 10. Yes. So quantumsoundtherapy.com is a collaboration of over 40 years of research where we have researched the impact of specific sound frequencies on the energy field. And we then developed machines that people can use in their home. They're plug and play 24/7 for the rest of your life, where we develop this field of coherence that Stewart is talking about. And your field of energy is enveloped. It's called an immersive quantum technology. So your field is, and the field of your brain is in training with coherent frequencies 24/7. So we have developed, for example, AM and PM soundtracks with very different intentions in mind, one to sleep, one to focus and evolve, and also the voice analysis software so that you can remove the obstacles to your enlightenment, which is why you're here, or your awakening. So you can remove those obstacles and the obstacles 7 generations pre and post. And what we're creating is actually a coherent bubble or quantum vortex for you to bathe in, so you can effortlessly release all that isn't serving you at this time and move into this new open field, this new concept, this new way of being, the quantum human.
Beautiful. So, everybody, I hope you heard this. Nancy's actually asking an interesting question. Just our final question. What is your favorite sound to emit?
Ah,
For all of you, please post our conversation. Go to www.quantumsoundtherapy.com. And there, it's a splendid site. You'll see very, very clear. Ryan's putting up the website on our screen, as you can see, you'll find a way of being able to connect very, very easily. What is your favorite sound to emit?
That's a good question. I would say the mantra Om Namah Shivaya is
Beautiful,
yeah.
beautiful,
So
beautiful.
Om is, yes, it's
I remember many years ago running a workshop in Connecticut, and it was a workshop for 40 leading psychotherapists from
oh, I
around the
missed
United
it.
States, and
Yeah.
long time ago, organized by a very dear friend of mine. And there was a gentleman from Chicago, interesting, who was a psychotherapist in a major state penitentiary.
Mm.
And I always remember he was a brown bear man. He sat, this wonderful man with this huge beard and little hair with these extraordinary eyes. And after my, I think, quite cogent introduction, he said to me, "Can you tell me the sound of the patriarchal archetype?" And it was an extraordinary question. So, of course, I responded very favorably. And in a flash, I said, I would rather not, but I think the question that you're asking is what was the vibration of your own father's voice?
Oh.
And he burst instantaneously into floods of tears.
Ah,
So what
beautiful.
he was, what he was masking about the vibration of the patriarchal countenance was actually really enraptured within the aggressive stance of his father, who of course had passed. I mean, we're talking about a very mature man.
Mm.
This has
Yeah,
been the most amazing conversation. Thank
thank
you
you.
so much. Thank you so much. And everybody, thank you, Helena. Please stay where you are. Everybody who have tuned in, there are so many names peeling through the chat box. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. I saw in a video last week that said B flat is the largest frequency in outer space in our universe.
Mm.
It's a very, very high frequency, but there are others. The difficulty is that our instrumentation, whether it be humanoid in the form of the ear, is actually immensely insufficient, as Helen and I both know.
Mm.
Our hearing is possibly between 15 and 25,000 hertz cycles per second, whereas whales and dolphins and elephants hear between 2 or 5 and 350,000 hertz cycles per second. So they hear overtones that we don't hear in the way that dog whistles we can't hear, but the dogs can. Bless you, everybody. Namaste, namaste, namaste. And don't forget, Enchantment, a workshop on a Sunday evening, October the 24th. Come along, and we will be chanting all of ourselves into coherence. I love you all. Namaste. Thank you so much, Ryan.
Thank you.